Hello, Athens. Welcome to the Classic City Business Podcast. Our mission? To connect our community to the local business owner. If you love Athens and love supporting the people behind our businesses, then you're in the right place. We get to know the people behind the sign. Some are legends, others are on their way. You're listening to the Classic City Business Podcast with your friend, your host, all-around great guy, and owner of Generations Commercial Cleaning, John Gluck. So get ready, buckle up, hang on, here we go. Hello, Athens. Welcome to the Classic City Business Podcast. I am your host, John G. And today we're connecting our community to the people behind the sign, Geo-Hydro Engineers. I'm here with Phillip, Madrid. Thank you for being with us today. Why don't you go ahead and just start at the beginning. Tell us about what you guys do, how you serve our community, and what is hydro engineering?
What does the geo mean and what does the hydro? Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the chance to share about what we do. We are an engineering and geology consulting firm with a little bit of extra. We provide consultation and inspection services that support construction projects mostly. So we have 5 service lines. Construction, materials testing, and inspection is the main one, and that's the one that I work for. We have geotechnical investigations. So think before architects and engineers really start designing a project, before any earth has been moved, let's investigate the soil and the rock to determine if there is hard rock really near the surface or if there's groundwater that's going to impact grading and development, and create a report that other consultants will use in the design so that they can start with an idea of what the soil is going to be like. We have environmental, and so we do investigations about sites and their history. If there has been contamination, maybe there was an old gas station or a laundromat there, what might be there, and then if that cursory level investigation turns over some possibilities, then we may actually go out and take samples and test that and provide recommendations for remediation as well as inspections. We have ecology, which is delineating wetlands to make sure projects don't adversely impact the natural environment to protect. And then the newest service line is industrial hygiene. So think, hey, we're going to do a big remodel project on this old building. Is there asbestos or lead? So we do research and testing to determine if those issues exist, and then provide recommendations and oversight of contractors during remediation. So really, we support the development and construction industry with expert and professional opinions and trained staff.
So we've all seen that episode on, I don't know, whatever investigative show where something happens to a building, it falls down, they find out there was some kind of structural issue with the ground before. That's literally what you do?
Yeah, that's part of what we do. You know, the sad thing is there's a lot of TV shows about lawyers, about policemen, but how many TV shows are about civil engineers and geologists? I guess maybe our field isn't quite as interesting, but I hope you find this podcast interesting.
Well, shoot, man. I mean, there was movies like, Indiana Jones. I mean, isn't that? Well, that's a little bit different.
That's a little bit different. Yeah. So I'll unpack a little bit more the construction materials testing and inspection service line that I'm a project manager in. So that is something that's required by the building code. There's an international building code that Georgia has modeled its laws after, and that code determines lots of things, including the design. And then it specifies that during construction on commercial, educational, certain types of projects, that a professional engineer with a accredited or certified materials testing laboratory. So we go through lots of processes and assessments from outside agencies to determine that we are following proper quality control procedures, that we have qualified staff, that we have good workflows, that our reports are being not just written well, but reviewed by engineering staff. And so a firm like ours is involved during construction, watching, testing, assessing, to look at the structural components of the building to make sure that they are what is shown on the construction plans and specifications.
So it's not just before.
Yeah. So
started, it's the whole process.
From conception to completion of a project, we're usually involved in some way. So what that looks like on a practical level is the first thing a contractor does when they mobilize to a site to start construction is clear out previous buildings or structures, and they grade off the grass and the topsoil that has organic material in it. And here in Georgia, we get to our beautiful red dirt. Usually that's a silty sand or a sandy silt. And then they have to fence off around the perimeter to keep rainwater from washing sediment onto streets or into our creeks. That's a really important thing. And we also provide inspections of the stormwater protection improvements that keep the soil on the site instead of sending it into our lakes, streams, and streets, or storm drain systems where it clogs up wastewater treatment plants. And then the contractor will start moving earth. And at that point, we have a technician on the site watching them cut material from the high side of the site where the elevation is a little bit higher. They're pushing it down onto the lower site. They're placing it in layers and running over it with compaction equipment. So we test the density of the soil to make sure it meets project quality, so it won't settle over time.
So what does that look like from a practice standpoint? How do you test it?
Ooh, good question. So we'll go a little bit into the math because you kind of have to. All soil is different, so it's very challenging when it comes to designing buildings and structures. Concrete, steel, masonry, wood, they all have very known construction properties, and they're relatively homogeneous, meaning the steel on one half of the beam is going to be just as strong on the other half of the beam if it's the same kind of steel. But especially in Georgia, you might go from one side of the site to another side of the site and have a completely different soil, completely different strength, completely different properties. So it takes a lot of expertise, and that's why you want to have a local company. We service other areas of Georgia. We have multiple offices. We have offices in North Carolina, but I work here in Athens, and I want to know the Athens soil and the Athens bedrock. So because of a certain mineral in our soil, mica, a normal technique that is used to test the density of soil, which is to actually use a nuclear density gauge. It has a small radioactive source in it with sensors, and it measures the radiation that bounces back from the soil. That equipment actually doesn't really work very well in our soil because of this mica mineral that's in it. So instead, we take a cylinder that's open on both ends. We hammer it into the soil. We know the dimensions of the cylinder. We know the mass of this metal cylinder. And then once it's hammered into the compacted fill soil, we measure the mass of that cylinder filled with soil. So we know the volume and we know the mass. And then we take a portion of that sample of the soil and we actually cook it on a Coleman propane camping stove to burn off all the moisture. And then we perform a calculation. So we measure, basically we're measuring the dry density of the soil. So the volume that it occupies. And
how deep do you have to go?
This is during construction.
Right.
So we're just testing every other lift of soil that the contractor is placing in fill. We're taking a density test.
A few feet? Less? Or?
Well, there are projects where there might be a 20-foot elevation difference from one side of the building area to the other. And so the contractor has to cut 10 feet from the high side and push all that soil over to the low side to make a flat area to construct the building. And so it could take, a few weeks out there of grading as they come up. And so we're out there regularly on a daily basis where they might be coming up a couple feet or 3 feet a day.
So, but that's what you're testing at one time.
Yeah. We're just
literally a hammer. It's not a machine.
No, not a machine. Yeah. It's not automated. It's manual labor. So we hammer the cylinder into the soil. We dig it out with a shovel and a digging bar. And then we do our engineering calculations to measure the density. But then the key part is we have to then compare that to something. So, okay, I know the density, but relative to what? Is it good or is it bad? So in our laboratory, we have a very similar setup, like a mold that has a bottom plate and it's cylindrical, and we put soil in layers there, and we have a hammer that's all standardized, and we compact a soil specimen in this mold at various moisture contents. So kind of dry, kind of wet, and kind of in between. And we basically plot a graph. So if you think about it intuitively, if I have a soil that's really, really dry and I try to compact it, it doesn't hold together. You're not going to be able to get good density out of it. Or if I have a soil that's really, really wet and I try to compact it, it's just going to be moving all around. It's going to act like Jello almost. Or like trying to compact pudding. You can't do it. So what we're looking for is an optimum moisture content at which we can achieve the maximum density. And then in the project specifications or plans, it'll say something like the soil you place as fill under the building area needs to be compacted to 95% of the maximum dry density. So we compare the density of the soil in the field with that cylinder test to our laboratory test, and determine, hey, contractor, you need to compact it a little bit more, or hey, you're doing a great job. The moisture content is right in line with what it needs to be. Your densities are great. You're actually at 98, 99%.
So that actually is, I was going to ask you. So when this comes back to the contractor and they've got to make adjustments, the adjustments are just based on compacting it more?
Yeah.
What kind of modifications can you do to adjust? That sounds like it's a complicated thing too.
It can get really complicated. So Georgia is a challenging place to work in this regard compared to where I used to work in California, because where I worked in California, it didn't rain or hardly ever rained. And you might get a surprise pop-up thunderstorm or rainstorm in the afternoon here in the summer, and it rains a lot in the winter. And like I said, moisture is a really big deal when it comes to soil compaction. You can't compact it if it's too wet. So what the contractor has to do is kind of come in with a bulldozer and rip it up and leave it exposed to sun and wind so it dries back to closer to the optimum moisture content. They can also add cement or lime and mix it into the soil, which actually produces a chemical reaction and can make the soil compactable and stronger at a really wet moisture content.
I heard you say lime.
Lime.
It processed. No, did you say concrete?
Cement.
Or cement?
So cement is one ingredient of concrete. Concrete is made up of cement, which is
I feel like I'm in science class.
Oh man,
this morning.
I could go all day. So yeah, a lot of times people use the words cement and concrete interchangeably, like they're the same thing. They're actually not. I used to have that as a pet peeve, but I've matured into my mid-30s.
I'm so happy to hear you say that.
So I don't call people out on that because that would just be rude. Yes.
I feel like you kind of are right now.
Well,
is it passive aggressive?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. So concrete is cement, water, fine and coarse aggregate. So think gravel and sand. And then you may have admixtures in. So for instance, if you're placing concrete and it's 30 degrees outside, you may put in an admixture to help it cure properly in that cold temperature. Or you may put in an ingredient. Concrete strength is highly dependent on how much water you use. If you mix a lot of water in concrete, it tends to have a lower strength. And so, but it's also hard to place if it's really dry. Like it doesn't move if you're trying to vibrate it and make a slab. It's very hard to work with. So you can put chemicals in your concrete that make it more workable with less water added. And then sometimes they use recycled products like fly ash or slag that come from coal power plants or things like that. The cement part is, I guess I'll use the technical term. It creates a pozzolanic reaction. So that's what it reacts with water and makes kind of crystals that makes it hard, basically. So it's kind of incorrect to say that concrete is drying. It's really curing. It's reacting, and the water the water isn't evaporating from the concrete and making it dry. The water is actually reacting with the chemicals in the cement to harden and cure and become something. It's a different chemical structure after it cures than before the concrete has set.
All right, so guys,
yeah, you can add cement, the powder cement, and mix it into soil and treat the soil to where it would have been uncompactable, unworkable, and you can actually move forward. Comes at a cost, but sometimes time is money.
Wow. Yeah. So we really did a deep dive there. So
yeah,
I apologize to the audience if it was like went off.
John's curious.
Yeah, I am. I've never heard of mixing cement with dirt, but that makes sense, especially if it's crystallized or hardened.
Because concrete is it's sand and rocks and water and cement paste, right? That's what concrete or cement. That's what it is. So soil. A lot of our soil has gravel in it. There's water in the soil, so it's
particularly in Georgia.
Intuitively, like you're not making concrete in the same way that you make at a plant, but you're making something that's similar that's going to be stronger than you could get with soil and water alone.
So we really did go deep and spent a lot of time, and I did get caught up. I have to admit. So if I was to bring this back home in this segment, hydro. Mm-hmm. If you were to explain it in a paragraph, what would you say to someone?
Okay, so what I do is we keep projects moving forward. We manage costs and we mitigate risk by providing inspection and testing services during construction. So we talked about soil. After the contractor digs foundations, we look at those excavations and make sure that the soil or rock is capable of supporting the loads that the building is going to put on it without settling or cracking the foundations. We look at rebar and concrete and we test it during construction. We look at masonry and test masonry, steel, welding and bolting, structural wood, and other things. So our job is to inspect the contractor's work to see if it complies with the construction plans for the purpose of public safety and making sure that the owner or developer is actually getting what they paid for from the contractor.
Sure. Okay.
So that's it in a nutshell.
That's a very big nutshell, my friend.
It's a very important job that a lot of people don't know about.
We don't think about it.
No, you walk into a building and you just think it's not going to fall down on you. And engineers, geologists, our field technicians are part of the reason why it doesn't fall down on you.
Yeah, exactly. You're just going in to do your business, shop, play, whatever. That is kind of fascinating though, man. I had no idea it was that detailed.
Yeah.
I've got a friend of my son's actually is kind of in this realm. He's getting ready to graduate. He's doing an internship now. And I just started putting some of this together, some of the stuff that he was talking about. So that's kind of cool on a personal level. One of my favorite segments, they're all my favorite, they're like my kids. One of my favorite segments is getting to know the person behind the sign. So that's part of the reason why you're here. Tell us something about yourself that maybe even some of your family, friends, coworkers may not know. And maybe they would be surprised enough to say what now?
Oh, that's a good one. I love to sing. So
you got me.
There you go.
Just met, but
I love to sing. So I don't know if I grew up singing. I grew up singing because I went to church and you sing in church, but I didn't really love it. And I've recently recaptured a love of singing.
Wait. When you say sing in church, are you talking about like congregational?
Yeah, congregationally. I wasn't up on the front singing special music and performing. I did play piano as a kid, took piano lessons, but yeah, singing there's just something that is deeply emotional and moving. And I'm not performing. I'm not in a choir or anything. So my dad was the worship leader at the church that I grew up in, same church my entire childhood. And he loved to sing. Like he passed away 2 years ago. It's actually Father's Day will be the 2-year anniversary of his death.
He passed on Father's Day?
No, well, it was 2 years ago. It was around Father's Day.
Okay.
He was in his early 60s, had a heart attack. So if you're hearing this, check your heart out, ask your doctor about it. Totally came out of the blue, there were no signs. But he was a great, great man. He was actually the same kind of engineer I am, and that I followed in his footsteps. And I think right around the time that he had passed away, I realized as a father, part of my responsibility is to pass on my faith and like the culture of our family to my children. I have now a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an almost 2-year-old. She's like 20 months. And so singing and music has been a big part of the Madrid family for generations preceding my father. And so the way that I've been able to integrate that into our family is through singing. So I found this app that's amazing. So if you grew up going to a more traditional church and they sang hymns, you probably know the melodies to the hymns, but you may not have ever been taught how to sing your part. And so there's an app, it's called Sing Your Part, and it has little toggle switches where you can put up the alto part or the bass part and take down the other parts, and you can actually learn your part. So I'm going back to these hymns that I used to sing as a kid. And now, I don't know if you can hear on the podcast, I have a little bit of a low voice. I'm learning to sing the bass parts, and I'm teaching my kids to sing the melodies, and my wife can sing soprano or alto. And so we're not quite there yet, but we're getting to the point where, the family can sing, like, say, the doxology, praise God from whom all blessings flow. And I'm singing the bass, my wife's singing alto, the kids are singing the soprano part because little boys have high voices. And it's amazing. Like, it does something to your soul that you wouldn't expect, especially when you hear voices blending together with harmonies. It's amazing. So yeah, a lot of people don't know. A lot of times I'll have either a podcast or I'll have a song that I'm practicing on in the car while I'm driving around. If people see me in the white Geo Hydro pickup truck driving around town, they might think, oh, he's having a really aggressive phone conversation. Well, I'm probably practicing singing. So yeah, that's something a lot of people don't know. And
dude, that may have been one of the best answers to that question. Wow. I didn't look, I don't know you. So when I say, something I didn't know about you, but I did not see that one coming.
Yeah.
So I could see your coworkers or friends going, say what?
Yeah.
So, okay. So this is obviously fairly new. So the cool thing that I just heard you say about the whole family dynamic is it's obviously a really cool way for you to all to bond.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's kind of soul fulfilling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it scratches that itch that watching a movie together as a family just doesn't. That's kind of passive. This is active. It's engaging, and we're actually creating something. We're creating a beautiful beautiful sound, beautiful music. We
were talking about culture off mic, and you just said something about sitting around and watching the movie. There's nothing wrong with that for sure. We all enjoy doing that from time to time, but it's funny how. Back in the olden days, I'm doing air quotes, guys. Olden days where, family sat down for dinner. They played, we had family game night.
Yeah.
So we did things together at the table, and it just seems like everything now is geared toward detaching that.
Individual screens,
right.
Separating out, not eating at the table together. So yeah, part of what I'm trying to do is I want to continue the family culture and build on it. So like we do in soils and foundations, you got to start the foundation right. And then if you do that, the superstructure, everything you build above it is well supported. So while my kids are young, we're working on the foundation, and it is hard work sometimes.
So one of the questions I love to ask in this segment is, and I'm curious after that, that statement, book or movie?
Oh man, it would probably be book. Yeah. So I love novels. For a while, I felt guilty about reading novels, like, oh, this isn't productive. But you can probably tell I'm a Christian. And what I realized is, you think about the Bible, it's not really a list of rules. There are parts of it that are rules and laws and letters, but really it's a story. And I believe that God communicates to us through story. And one of the most powerful ways to communicate truth is through great stories. So I read the whole series out loud of the Chronicles of Narnia to my sons this past year or so. And, we just read a chapter a night, and my 5-year-old he's hooked. Like he could another chapter. Mm-hmm. And so books, again, it's part of bringing that family, building a family culture. Like we're reading stories to our kids, and not like trash stories that have no purpose or anything, but there's really deep truth, values embedded in these stories. And so if you're not a reader, or you got soured on reading because your high school English teacher was a little bit of a tough case on you, there's hope in your adulthood to rediscover good literature. I also like to read nonfiction books too, but I no longer feel guilty at all about reading really good fiction novels.
Yeah, that sounds like a whole nother podcast about why you would feel guilty about something like that. But you know what? Really, I remember growing up as a kid, my mom reading stories to us, and I'm going to say something that I bet a fraction of our audience would even recognize this, if that. But Sugar Creek Gang.
Okay, yeah.
So I used to love listening to mom read, and when we had a choice between watching a movie or mom reading the book, a lot of people won't believe this, but we'd rather hear mom read the story. So when you said that, it kind of took me back. I love that you're kind of going old school with that. Your kids are very blessed. So let's jump into I keep saying this, one of my favorite segments.
They're all your favorites.
I know they are. It's like my babies. I told you, my kids. This is my Athens. There's a lot to love about Athens, man. And so I love hearing a perspective other than mine about what you love most about Athens. What was a draw? I mean, obviously you came here for work, but what's the one thing that stands out?
Well, rewind just a second. So my wife and I and our kids, we moved to Athens in July last year. So we're coming up, it's middle of June. We're coming up on 1 year of being here. And we were in California before. And the easiest way to describe why we moved is there was a little bit of a culture incompatibility between California and where it was going and where our family was going. And there was going to be a lot of factors, whether it was spiritual, educational, financial, vocational, that were kind of working against us building the kind of family life that we wanted to. And I'm from Florida. And so moving back to the South was a good option to consider. So I talked to a recruiter and he connected me with geohydro engineers, and they offered me to work either in Kennesaw, Lawrenceville, or Athens. And immediately in my head, I was thinking Athens is it. I did go to the University of Florida, and I know that's a little bit of a point of contention here with John across the table. Not contention, but fun rivalry, right?
No, I want to say this on the record. So you said that you were a man of faith, a Christian, as a matter of fact. And there's a difference, right? I think that one of the things that I believe as a Christian, that Jesus died for all sinners, and even the greatest of those. So the fact that you went to Florida, I am not judging you any harsher than somebody who was blessed to be at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs.
I hear what you're saying. I hear the words you're saying.
Yeah. So do you? Yeah, I think you do.
I hear them.
You hear that tone?
I don't necessarily agree with them, but I hear them.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. We could still break bread together. So anyway, Gainesville's a great college town, and Athens is a great college town. I loved living in a college town. I actually did campus ministry for a few years after I graduated college. I love college students. And so immediately that was what drew me. Also, we lived in San Diego, big city. I didn't really want to live in a big city again with the gravitational pull of Atlanta, all the traffic and things like that. My wife was up in the air. And so we came and visited, and we visited each office and saw the areas around, and, Gwinnett County, Kennesaw area. It's suburbia, it's sprawling, terrible traffic. Not that there's not areas of Athens that have bad traffic, but it's just not the same. And it had this feel to it. And she was converted during that trip. Like, okay, if we're going to move to Georgia, this is where we want to be. We don't want to be in Kennesaw or Lawrenceville. No shade to the people that live there. I'm sure you can have a great life. It's just different. And this is what we wanted for our family. So I'm relatively new. We're still exploring. We're still learning a few of the things that our family really loves. We live on Atlanta Highway in Bogart, basically, and the Bogart Library there, really nice facility. We talked about books. My kids they can't get enough. They could go to the library and get a new set of books every few days. So much love to the people that operate our library system and help the kids out. And then the YMCA, off mic, we had talked about your interviews with the Georgia's
Shay.
Piedmont and with Shay here in town. We're members of the Athens YMCA. My kids are learning how to swim in that pool. I'm lifting weights and getting rid of some of my dad bod in the gym.
Oh, this guy!
And people are
can't
so
see him,
friendly. It's such a great addition to our community.
So I digress a little bit.
Yeah.
You were talking about being from Florida and being in California and then Georgia, and I do say this tongue in cheek, but I'm serious. We've had a couple of Georgia football players who have graduated, and both of those kids were from Marshall Morgan is one of them, and then John Theus, and they've graduated from here, played for Mark Rick, so it's been a few years ago, but they've now come back and they do life and business here. They fell in love with Athens. So I say that to say this: when you come to Athens, there is something about the community. There is something that's very friendly about it. It just makes you like, I want to be a part of that community. So to that point, I know I like to be funny about the whole Florida Georgia thing, but there really is something to that.
Oh, absolutely. And then a couple other things. One of the first parks or things that we visited was the Botanical Gardens. Oh, yeah. It's amazing and great for little kids. We had a total blast out there. The Extra Special People Park in Watkinsville, one of the coolest parks I've been to. You know, a lot of the stuff that our family loves is centered around the kids. And then the Sandy Creek Nature Preserve as well. Or the Nature Center, is that what it's called? I'm
not sure about that one.
Yeah, you can learn. Basically, it's learning and playing combined, that's what little kids need. They need active learning.
I want to go back to the Extra Special People. So we had Laura Whitaker. I don't know if you know who she is.
Okay. I can't remember if I listened to that one or not. I did my homework. I listened to some of your episodes before I came on here, and I loved it. So very excited.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That park though is absolutely amazing. And I'm going to say this. If you all have not experienced getting to go to that park and just hanging out and looking at it, it's worth a day trip.
Yeah.
The way they have the park set up for the special needs kids, a lot of times you're like, oh, it's for special needs. No, the way they set this up is so that the kids who are blessed and don't have the special needs can literally play and do the same activities alongside the special needs kid. And it's very interactive with both kids. It normalizes special needs, which I think is awesome.
Absolutely.
And then the ballpark to the left of that, as you're looking at it from the building, the way they have that set up and the time and the energy. And again, the heart of Athens and the money that poured into it. Brad Akins actually was part of that in Winder. It's just amazing. YMCA connection there is the reason why I bring that up. So it's really cool to get to see those things. And if you haven't done that, you need to go out there and check that park out. So.
Absolutely.
And I think we said this off mic, but you were talking about the Botanical Gardens, not too far down the road.
Yeah.
And 5 Points is where that park, the zoo is. You need to take the kids over there.
The zoo. I didn't even know it existed. So I will talk to my wife about that, and I'm sure we'll make a trip out there or out east from Bogart to 5 Points, and we'll make the trek.
That long track. Yeah.
Right. Everything's close in Athens. It's another thing to love.
So, and I feel like I bring this up every podcast that we do, but it's so true, and I love it so much. I need to get some T-shirts made. One of our guests early on, I asked the question, what's your favorite thing about Athens? He goes, this is the smallest big town you'll ever be a part of. And I thought, oh my gosh, one sentence says it all. Yeah. Because there's so many things to do. There's so many different identities inside, whether it's normal town, 5 Points. I mean, you can go on. And even outside of Athens, that other community, whether it's Watkinsville, the Wire Park, which I haven't visited yet. I know, shame on me. That's on my bucket list. I'm going to do that probably this month yet. So there's so many cool things. So I get excited when we talk about this stuff, man. You can probably tell. But yeah, you definitely got to check out the zoo. I think you'll love it. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have?
We didn't talk food yet, did we?
Oh man! Oh, well, come on.
Well, I'm still pretty new.
I know. I just assumed you were like that was your thing about Athens. So I love talking food. Shame on me. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to offer here since we're still so new, and we're in that stage of life with little kids where we don't get to go out to eat a lot. But we've been to a couple nice dinners at the National, I think is what it's called, downtown. Is that what it is? It's like across from Creature Comforts downtown. Nice restaurant, just delicious food, very cool ambiance. I really enjoyed that for some dates. And then I love Barbaritos. And that's an Athens thing, right?
Sorry. Yes, it is an Athens thing. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. Barbaritos, it is very Athens. In fact, I need to have them on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
I was doing this whole big pause here. 3, 2, 1. Yes, Barbaritos is an Athens thing. You are the second person within the last couple months that actually brought up. In fact, we were talking about Brad Akins.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Oh, yeah. He said his order, and they already know what his order is.
He just walks in and they got to be It's so funny that you bring that up. I don't think.
Tremendous value. It's delicious. And it's pretty healthy too. So, I mean, that's kind of the trifecta there, what you look at for a lunch or a quick family dinner when you just didn't have time to prepare for a home cooked meal.
So there
awesome. We go. I'm their new spokesperson, I guess.
Yeah, maybe we should.
Maybe they can sponsor GeoHydro Engineers
or the Classic City
Business Podcast.
I love it. That's awesome. So those are your 2 favorites. You got anything else?
That's what I got for now. We've been to Mama's Boy a few times for breakfast. Great view of the river there and delicious food.
So which Mama's Boy?
Forgive me. It's the one on the Oconee River.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where you can see go out on the patio in the back. We usually end up out on the patio because the kids can be a little noisy inside, and it's easier to let them run around once they finish their meal. So.
Okay. Yeah. There's one on Oconee Street, and then I think there's one over where you're talking about. So that's awesome.
Probably their newer location, I would guess.
Those biscuits over there.
Oh man. That's what I realized. So in California, breakfast, kind of one of the things is donuts. There's a lot of independent mom and pop donut shops, but in Georgia, it's biscuits.
Biscuits, absolutely.
And so, who's got the best biscuits? That's a debate. That's a debate I'm not willing to get into yet. I just don't have the wealth of information.
Well, you need to do your research.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Okay,
right?
Well, I'll tell my wife. John said, we got to get more biscuits.
If you're going to be Athens, you got to be Athens. Yeah. So you got to go out and get some more biscuits.
Love it.
Places. All right. With that said, is there anything throughout the podcast, whether it's about Athens, you personally, or the business itself, is there anything that I should have asked, wished I would have asked, I didn't?
Nothing really. I don't really have anything to add.
So what I hear you saying is I did a good job.
You did a great job.
That's all I wanted to hear.
I had fun. Fun was had, laughter, and I didn't get ragged on too much for being a Florida Gator, so I'll count that as a win.
Well, there's a way that you can endear yourself to the community. Athens, I hope you enjoyed this ride as much as I have. Until next time, go Dogs.
Except when we play Florida.
Go Dogs. It doesn't work that way.
No. Oh, I just can't. You're lucky you got to go Dogs out of me. Hey, I did root for the Dogs in the throughout the football season this past year, except that last weekend in October. I can't do it.
This is the craziest thing I've ever done on a sign-off. But guys, we're going to get him before it's over with. He'll be a dog.
Maybe someday.
Okay, guys, we did it. We made it to the end of the show. Now that you've heard at least one episode, can you do me a favor? If you know someone you would like to hear on a future episode, you can contact us or have them contact us at podcastjohng@gmail.com or just message us on our social media platforms or on Instagram, Facebook. Just search the Classic City Business Podcast. You'll find us. One more thing. Please like, rate, review, and share. All of this really helps a lot. We really do want to connect our community to the local business owner. We believe this is a great platform to do just that. And thank you for taking this ride with us as we get to know the people behind the sign. It's going to be a lot of fun. In Athens, until next time, I'm John G. and go Dogs.